И станет Родина любимая сильней.
It's rare to happen upon something so unique as the Tomorrow Children. Admittedly, not knowing so much about the game prior to launch, I basically went into the game blind. The results of that have been somewhat surprising for an early access free-to-play title. So, does the Tomorrow Children build itself up to prosperity? Or does it exist on an island in its own void? The Tomorrow Children's story exists in an alternate Cold War reality, where a global experiment to combine the consciousness of humanity resulted in a near-extinction level event and the creation of the Void, the culmination of the experiment's failure. You were called a projection clone, a being created to move within this simulation-like experience created by the experiment. Your task is to visit towns which serve as separate servers existing throughout the void and building them back up, rescuing the lost who have somehow become fragile dolls that can be nurtured back to life, and defending the town from monsters called Isverg, beings created by the fear in the minds of those affected by the void. The story in The Tomorrow Children really only serves as a foundation of the game's aesthetic and sound, but doesn't present itself too often outside of the game's opening tutorial. The core gameplay mechanics of The Tomorrow Children combines exploration, resource gathering, town management, and tower defense with one main twist. Other players inhabit the same space to handle all of these tasks cooperatively and collectively. Aside from the tutorial, which gives a basic understanding of some of the more simple game mechanics, the game doesn't do a lot of work to introduce you to the game world and the happenings within it, once it tosses you in. Depending on the type of player you are, you will either find this appealing or you'll struggle with it, but be prepared to spend some time understanding your surroundings either way. Once you've acquainted yourself with the core idea, there's an interesting gameplay loop there. The most interesting concept of the game lies in the islands, mysterious voxel-based structures manifested by thoughts of those affected by the void. These structures serve as dungeons filled with resources, items, enemies, and challenging traversal that can see you dead with a slight misstep. This is where you will see the collective work of the players inhabiting the play space, seeing other players work together to systematically pull apart these structures using teamwork tactics that would otherwise be a complete chore. Another impressive aspect of exploring these island dungeons is that the darkness inside them is harmful, so light utilization is important while traversing the interiors. This creates a challenge, facilitates atmosphere, and promotes further cooperation with other players. One unfortunate aspect of the game, at least with the game's current build, is watching players seemingly move in and out of connection with the game, which repeatedly disconnects you from the feeling that somebody else is there with you, only to see them pop back in again. It's an unnecessary distraction and detracts from the concept of the game's collective play. But as fun as the core concept of the gameplay could be, one unfortunate reality sets in. After a moderately short time with the experience, the gameplay loop hits a hard wall, and the realization sets in that there's no clear and tangible goal in all the work you're putting in, and the experience can become increasingly cyclical depending on the kind of player you are. The main thing that has me coming back is the feeling the game gives when you're seeing everything come together with a team of players making the whole thing work, and it's interesting to play a part in that. All in all, I see a lot of potential in the core concept, mainly in how cohesive player cooperation is and can be in the future. I'd just like to see an ultimate goal that everyone is striving for. Design-wise, The Tomorrow Children is a game like no other. The general theme of the game revolves around Soviet-era design and execution. The game overflows with communist and socialist themes from every corner of its design. Cementing this is the in-your-face propaganda from every sign and television screen around the towns, and loudspeakers shouting glorious messages of prosperity for the motherland. While these design choices are pretty bold, they aren't without fault. My only gripe with the game artistically is the actual void itself. In a land that's supposed to be made from nightmares and collective consciousness, it comes across as bland and one-dimensional, which is odd considering what the void is supposed to represent. On the performance and graphics front, it's pretty standard fare, which is passable. Lights and shadows steal the show for this game's overall graphical feature set, along with some subtle motion blur, and the game's deliberately muted color palette at times makes for some pretty nice views. Then daylight hits and everything becomes vibrant. Graphically, the only thing I struggled with was the amount of blur being used for distanced objects. There were times I wanted to be able to view towns from a distance, only to have them almost completely blurred out. And apart from some frame dips within town centers when things get busy, the Soviet-era design, the charming art direction, strikingly from something that is normally perceived as threatening and intimidating in our real world, is really quite nice. In conclusion, The Tomorrow Children is a game that can hold your attention if you're interested in banding together with other players to make something sizable function. While it isn't particularly groundbreaking in terms of core mechanics, it uses those mechanics with fresh perspective. It's a bold experiment, just like its premise, and with continued support, it too can reach prosperity. I look forward to seeing what the future holds for this scrappy little title, and it's certainly worth seeing how that unfolds.